Okay, welcome everyone. If you're here about Pride and Place, then you're exactly where you need to be. I'm Andrew Laird, I'm the Chief Executive of Mutual Ventures, and we're a public services consultancy, works with councils and their partners on a whole range of things, including delivering inclusive growth and regeneration strategies. And I'm delighted to be joined by Tracy Ingham, who is the Assistant Director of Safe and Strong Communities in Westmoreland and Furness. And Westmoreland and Furness are one of the recipients of Pride and Place funding. Also delighted to be joined by Nathan Wall, who is the Assistant Director for Economic Growth and Regeneration at Gedling Borough Council. And Nathan led on the operationalisation of the Gedling's plan for neighbourhoods funding. And then my colleague Mark Bandali is also here. Mark's one of our managing consultants, and Mark has been working with Nathan at Gedling. So, Pride and Place. This is the government's flagship communities programme, which will provide up to 5 billion of long-term support to up to 250 of the most in-need communities. Now, this all started with the plan for neighbourhoods in March this year, and that was a 1.5 billion programme, it is now, which will deliver 20 million of funding to support over the next decade to 75 communities in the UK. So that was the plan for neighbourhoods from earlier in the year, and that's now been expanded to the Pride and Place programme. So both of these programmes, they're based, as I said, on the allocation of 20 million over 10 years, with a neighbourhood board setting a 10-year strategy and agreeing a 4-year investment plan. And as a general comment, I think it's really important that the Pride and Place programme isn't just another programme that exists and then runs out. It really is a potential bridge between public services and public investment in infrastructure. And there are also some interesting potential connections with the work going on around neighbourhood health. So I think we'd all like to look at this funding through its potential to be a catalyst for other things as well. It's also worth noting that whilst central government, MHCLG, have published a Pride in Place programme FAQ and a place selection methodology, the prospectus is still to be published. So our discussions today are based on the Pride in Place FAQ guidance, as well as the guidance and experiences from the Plan for Neighbourhoods programme. So we think that there will be a lot of learning from that, and it is very likely that the process will look something quite similar. So some specifics may change once the full programme prospectus is published, but we think it'll be quite similar. So before we start, a couple of house rules. We are recording this, so we'll be able to send you a link to that afterwards that you can share with any colleagues or wider if you would like. And also, if you would like to ask any questions, you can use the QA function at the bottom of your screen, and I'll try my best to get to as many of those as possible. So let's get cracking. So the Pride and Place guidance is clear in terms of decision making. So it's the neighbourhood board that is responsible for setting the 10-year strategy and identifying how that 20 million will be invested over the 10 years. And the council then acts as the accountable body for that period. So that's the kind of technical bit. So Mark, first question for you. Could you just outline the main roles and responsibilities of both the neighbourhood board and the council as the accountable body?
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everyone. Andrew, as you mentioned, the Pride in Place programme, it's designed to put decision-making powers into the hands of local people. And I think the neighbourhood board is really the vehicle for the delivery of the development of the delivery of the vision, and then overseeing that long-term investment strategy over 10 years. So it's very much represented in terms of its membership through, reflective of the communities, of the business base, of third sector organisations, and so on. And really is that sort of focal point for the thinking around what is our vision for the next 10 years, what are the challenges and opportunities, defining what good looks like, and how we'll get there, and then really providing that sort of oversight in terms of the delivery of the programme. Now, back to the point about it being the focus really being on local voices. the neighbourhood board needs to make sure that its decisions are based on a few things. One is consultation and engagement. The programme sees residents and businesses as the experts in terms of local problems and their solutions. So that there's that key sort of flow of information and insight and local views into the board, but also the interpretation of data, some of which will come from MHCLG, some of which will come from the council, as well as other partners as well. So it's really the brain that sits in terms of at the center of the program, defining the vision, the aspirations, making sure that what they're investing in is reflective of local views and needs. And really, it's on the hook for developing the 10-year regeneration plan and the 4-year investment plan. So ultimately, that decision-making power around what the focus is and what the investments are sit with the neighbourhood board. However, you've mentioned the council as well as, the accountable body. Where this works best in terms of plan for neighbourhoods is where there's that real partnership between the neighbourhood board and the council, and really for the neighbourhood board to see the council as an enabler. And what I mean by that is, the council is very well placed to support the board in terms of partnerships and coordination. So establishing those links between the board and, for example, the NHS, community organisations, Police and Crime Commissioner, Combined Authority, and so on. But also, the council will have a long established track record of engaging and consulting with communities. So there's this joint approach there. Also, from a technical perspective, the council will receive the funding, the 20 million over 10 years will go to the council. So it does have responsibilities around governance and oversight, which I think is where the sort of accountable body term comes from. So it's there to make sure that the programme is delivered in line with procurement regulations, has sufficient financial controls, is run in terms of best value, and really providing that assurance focus as well. It will also be responsible for monitoring and reporting back to MHCLG. But importantly, back to the neighbourhood board. The neighbourhood board isn't incorporated. So it, for example, couldn't employ staff or it couldn't hold contracts with third parties. And this is another important function, I think, of the council as the accountable body. If you want to employ a programme manager, the council would be potentially the employer. And also, if you want to procure, so spend the money through procurement, 20 million over 10 years, then the council could hold those contracts with third parties as well. So I think broadly, there's a real partnership there. There are defined functions, but where I've seen this work best, for example, in Gedling, is where you have that collaborative partnership between the two. They have defined roles, but ultimately working together for a common aim.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Mark. And Tracy, whilst Westmoreland and Furness has not been part of the Plan for Neighbourhoods programme, I know that in your patch you do have experience of establishing neighbourhood level governance and engaging with neighbourhoods. Can you say a little bit about that, please?
Thanks, Andrew. And yes, we've got a real mixed experience, I think it's fair to say, from some really hyper-local work with Big Local and the Lottery, where we worked with a very small-scale community, working with them and supporting them to set up the projects and the governance that they wanted on that real community footprint. So the community development team and partners came together. They co-designed their own board. They designed their plan. They very much led, and the councillor acted very much as that support and that enabler through to much, much bigger projects. So at the moment in Barrow, we have got Barrow Rising, which is £200 million investment in Barrow, and that's a partnership between BAE Systems, central government, and Westmoreland and Furness Council. And the governance for that is absolutely based on that Barrow footprint. Again, as Mark's just described, Westmoreland and Furness is the accountable body for the funding, but it's very much a partnership piece of work where we have tried as much as possible to co-design the different work streams, significant engagement with community and partners to identify where investment could best focus. So whilst this is a new programme to us in terms of Pride in Place, there's absolute learning that we can build on locally. I guess the thing for me is the recognition that no one size fits all. Every single scheme and project is different, and we need to work with the relevant partners and communities to co-design the best structure and the best governance around that.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And then Nathan, very warm welcome to you as well. So you've had, I suppose, the guts of 6 months now trying to get something very similar up and running. What's that been like in practice?
Thanks, Andrew, and hello to everyone. For us, it's worked incredibly well. It's been a really collaborative process, which has resulted in the development of a regeneration plan and investment plan that we can all be really proud of. We've been privileged to work with an experienced and talented board that has set a high standard and ambition for our plan from the offset. They've done a fantastic job in creating a sense of urgency, so a genuine passion for change within our Greater Carlton area. So to support that passion, I believe Mutual Ventures and the council officers have done equally well in steering us collectively toward an agreed set of milestones, whilst refining the board's understanding of needs through the findings of the extensive series of consultation and engagement exercises that we've done with the community. The board have naturally had high expectations, but have embraced the guidance and feedback provided when making decisions for the fund. And they've been really open to the ideas from our stakeholders and the practicalities of the fund that have worked throughout the development of the proposals that fit really well within the ethos of the programme. So the programme has strong similarities with UK SPF for anyone who's worked on that. The key difference, as Mark has alluded to, is that the council doesn't have overall control over the decisions. It's the board who have the control over those decisions, and we just needed to, and we have made sure that there are appropriate opportunities for the board to influence all reasonable aspects of the fund and be led to a point where they can make the right decisions for how the investments are going to be made. So it's been a really positive process.
Thank you. And then Nathan, just thinking about what to consider when thinking about the membership of that board, what sort of process did you go through there, and what sort of people have you got on it?
So the prospectus instructs that we have statutory representation on the board, including our local MP, local councillors, and a senior representative from the police. They're all relevant, and fortunately for us, made up of passionate individuals with great skills, knowledge, and experience that we were able to benefit from. But when building the board around these memberships, we felt it was vital to establish a group that had a good balance of skills and expertise to support the strategic decision making that would be required throughout the programme. Within the mix, we ensured that we had members who had a local sense of priority and understanding of the community, whilst balancing that with members who have worked on a wider scale with a strong understanding of national and wider policy. Whilst bringing in that experience, it was also important for us to bring in members who could offer fresh ideas and new perspectives to, people who haven't, if you want, become jaded by, previous schemes and programs. So it's great to get that balance in. Diversity and representation was essential for us too. By having a diverse group in our membership, we were able to build a more creative board and take advantage of experience reflecting on the wider needs of the residents within the borough. And then another consideration for us has been the size of the board too. So we wanted to ensure that we didn't have too many decision makers on the board, which could impact things such as decision making and accuracy and the time that it takes to get things put through, because we have to work at pace. But we ensured that we complemented that by inviting advisory members to the board to support considerations too, so they could also bring fresh ideas and perspectives. A significant consideration, of course, is the board chair. And we've been very fortunate to be led by two excellent and qualified chairs to date who have steered the group with the passion, experience and drive that you'd expect for a programme such as Pride in Place. We initially had the privilege of working with Sir John Peace, ex-chairman of Burberry, Standard Chartered, and the Chancellor of Nottingham Trent University. And we now have David Stewart, OBE, who brings over 5 decades of experience in education, community leadership, youth engagement, as a school governor, university lecturer and charity trustee. So he's got great connections with the community and really puts residents' needs at the heart of all of our decision making. So again, it's been another really supportive and positive process, which has brought out the best in collaboration for us.
Thanks, Nathan. It is so important to get those appointments right onto a decision-making body like this. And Tracy, I know that you haven't been through the Plan for Neighbourhoods process, but when you have previously thought, and when your colleagues at Westmoreland and Furness have previously thought about who to involve in those formal or semi-formal bodies that are engaging, what sort of process have you gone through, and what have you found that's worked well?
So I think one of the key things for us is absolutely making sure that we've got community at the heart of whatever we do, and therefore understanding very much who and what is actually in that community and who the key people are. So that's very much been our starting point in terms of who those community leaders are beyond our elected members. And then in terms of the broader partnership, we've got a number of structures already existing across Westmoreland and Furness where we do have really strong relationships, for example, with the university, business improvement district, local businesses and beyond. So we connect with those existing networks to start to identify who some of the key people who would be able to contribute and feed into, whether directly sitting on boards or whether being part of a wider network of support that we can lean into, depending on the aspects and the issues that are being considered. I mean, one of the things for me around the Pride in Place is it needs to be very much community-led and community-focused, is my understanding. And at this stage, from our perspective, we won't yet know what the priorities of that community are. We can have some guesses. So for me, there's got to be flexibility in how you develop and the governance that you put in place around the boards, with a view that that can change and develop over time. I mean, this is a 10-year programme, so crucially, as the vision and the plan is developed, it may be that we would need to bring in extra partners. So it's very much about levering our existing networks and partnerships, and also ensuring that we're not duplicating, but we're feeding into some of those existing structures. So I've already alluded to Team Barrow. We've got some phenomenal partners embedded already in that process. So for me, there's something about how we make sure there's the connection and that information flow across those. And the governance is going to be absolutely key in terms of this. And slight segue, but when looking at the governance, one of the things I think from council's point of view is making sure that we get the delegations right. So there's absolutely something for me about we need to get the appropriate delegations from our cabinet to the relevant officers or members to enable that process to be as streamlined and appropriate as possible. So we're not always trying to take decision making through perhaps longer processes than they need to be, with the focus needing to be around the neighbourhood board making those decisions.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And just Nathan, quick question for you that's come in. Just can you just say something about the size of the board, and maybe how many full members, how many advisory members, generally speaking, have you had?
I believe we are currently at 12 voting members, and I believe we've got another 6 non-voting members as well. And we've adjusted our chorusy within our terms of reference to ensure that we can allow for any absences. But we felt that across the board offers a really good streamlined approach. I know some boards have built more than that, but that's worked really well for us, whilst being able to ensure that we've got the right set of skills and experience within the group.
And just what sort of time commitment is it from those full members, those full voting members, roughly?
So it's within our terms of reference. We've asked boards to commit to a term of an initial 2 years, and we have that can be reviewed, and by the chair. We would like members to stay for the continuity, of course, but we do expect that as an initial commitment. And then we meet the board on a monthly basis to ensure the flow of the programme and ensure that all of the milestones are met and progressed toward. And we've been very fortunate with the commitment and the passion. We've had no real issues with anybody stepping away or not being able to fulfil the promise of their contributions. So yeah, it's been a real positive process for us.
That's great. And are these generally kind of pro bono positions, or how does it normally work?
In terms of the commitment, they're all committing for the full 2 years, and they're all offering full commitment to it. Okay. So we have had 1 or 2 examples where we've had to have substitutes come in where issues have arisen, but there've been substitutes from, for example, we've had the leader of the council bring another fellow councillor in as part of his team.
Okay. That sounds good. So the Plan for Neighbourhoods guidance was very clear in terms of the need for extensive engagement and consultation with local stakeholders. So when you're thinking about that consultation role, who should play a central role in shaping the strategy and investment decisions? So this is, Tracy, I'm going to come to you first, just as kind of to give a broader comment on this. So we're not talking about the formal involvement in the board or decision-making bodies, but just more generally, if you could give Tracy an idea of who Westmoreland and Furness have engaged with when doing similar programs, that would be really helpful.
Thanks, Andrew. So from an engagement perspective, as I've mentioned, we're really fortunate in that we have some quite established partnerships in place. So the particular area where Pride in Place is going to sit with ourselves, we've already got partnerships with the police and voluntary and community sector as well. In terms of engaging with the community themselves, we do have a dedicated community development team who have been carrying out a wide range of engagement activity and work over recent years, and will be reaching out into that community, the voluntary faith community sector. We will also be linking with the Business Improvement District. They're absolutely key players in the geography in which we're talking about here, and the wider business sector through the networks that exist there. More strategically, we'll absolutely be reaching out to the wider health system, because one of the issues that we're really aware of in Westmoreland and Furness are multiple challenges around health. So both at that very granular level, we have integrated care communities, so working with local practitioners who have already got the connections into that community, through to more strategic colleagues at the ICB level. The university and education providers are also absolutely key in some of the work we want to be doing around this as well. And more broadly, we would be obviously working with MHCLG, and we'd be taking learning as well from other organisations who've done similar pieces of work, and very much playing in the people that we need.
Thank you very much. And Nathan, can you just outline the approach you've taken in Greater Carlton to ensuring that the lived experience and views of communities, businesses, and community organisers are also influencing the strategy and investment plan?
Yes, thanks, Andrew. So over the summer of 2024, we led through Mutual Ventures, your good selves, we led a public consultation as part of the former long-term Plan for Towns programme, which evolved into our Plan for Neighbourhoods. The consultation captured the views of nearly 1,000 residents and gave them an opportunity to give their thoughts on the needs for the Greater Carlton area and for how the fund should be invested. The campaign was accompanied by a consultation with key stakeholders around the area that would be able to influence and support our decision-making and delivery of the programme. When the Plan for Neighbourhoods prospectus was released earlier this year, we felt it was best to avoid public confusion by going back out for a universal consultation. and opted to refine our research with a targeted stakeholder engagement campaign. And that decision was taken, of course, with approval of the board. The engagement exercise included a campaign with strategic partners to understand the priorities of key stakeholders, including East Midlands Combined County Authority, the Police and Crime Commissioner, Nottinghamshire County Council, and education and skills providers. We canvassed the views of local organisations to understand likely costs, anticipated timescales, and potential specification requirements for our proposals. We engaged with local businesses to understand the nature of their current needs and future business requirements. And then also internal council officers as well to understand the potential scale of any projects, the funding requirements and strategic alignments to council priorities. Both of these campaigns were really extensive and allowed us to gain a current understanding of the national and local needs, and to also identify gaps in support that the programme's interventions could address. So the research and feedback supported confidence in the board's thinking and decision making, and ultimately shaped the proposals that are now within our 4-year investment plan and 10-year regeneration plan.
Thank you. And then Mark, are there any key points from your perspective on how best to consult and engage?
Yeah, I mean, really building on what Tracy and Nathan have said, I think seeing this as the start of a 10-year journey is a helpful place to start, in that there's an initial requirement to go out to understand what local residents, businesses and community organisations, what the challenges are, what the barriers are, but also what the opportunities are. And for that to feed in, as both Tracy and Nathan have said, to the vision and to the priorities, but also to see this as a sort of on a 10-year basis. We'll need to check in to understand how are we doing, have those challenges changed or evolved. So actually seeing the initial engagement and consultation as laying a foundation at a very local level for this neighbourhood to engage in the future, and really laying that platform, and bit of developing that trust, that communication, and those connections, which really can be built on. So I think that's, seeing it like that is really important, because that's going to be the drumbeat over 10 years to monitor, to assess, to reevaluate our priorities and to move forward with them. So that I think is really important. And then building on what Tracy alluded to, not reinventing the wheel at the same time. If there is existing community capacity and capability to and structures and networks in place that can be tapped into, that's really important as well. There's no point creating structures that may already be there at a local level. So scanning what's already there, but also being conscious of the fact this is a 10-year programme, and the voice of residents and businesses will need to be pumped in at, on a periodic basis, really. So having those principles in mind, I think now is quite a helpful way of looking at things.
Thanks, Mark. And just while I have you there, a couple of I want to try and get through a few of those. There's a lot of questions here, so we might have to try and do a Q&A follow-up to this. But just someone's put in about how, if the partnership or if the board isn't incorporated, would any assets purchased under Pride in Place be held by the LA? I guess they would have to be, wouldn't they? If not incorporated, I mean, the council is one option. There's also options around, community organisations being the employer or the holder of assets or whatever it may be. The legalities of ownership would need to be thought through as part of the development of the proposition. Yeah. But there are options there. I mean, this programme is as much about building community capacity and capability. So, purchasing of assets, it could be a very feasible option. So there's also someone's put in a question, talks about, setting up community interest companies, community benefit societies. I think until we see the prospectus, I mean, that all of those types of options are there. They just need to be worked through. And then just a question probably for you, Nathan, quickly, just what sort of population were you working with for your plan for neighbourhoods? Nathan, that's a question for you. I'll come. Sorry, it's just having a bit of a technical issue there. I will come. I'll come back to that. But if I just move on to my next question. So one of the big things here, and this is what I mentioned at the start, was the need for this not just to be the 20 million over 10 years, but actually for it to be something that has additionality and is a catalyst. So I wonder.
I apologise, Andrew. I
Nathan.
can jump in now. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. That's all right. That's okay.
I do apologise. I had a bit of a technical issue there. Yeah, we've got a population of 120,000 within Gedling. So I believe the population that we'd be working with around the Gedling, the Greater Carlton area, would have been around 70.
70. Okay, so quite big actually, and probably someone else has put a question in that the Pride and Place neighbourhoods I think are smaller, so that'll be interesting to see. I can see Mark nodding there. So just thanks for that, Nathan. So just coming back to continue the question that I started asking there about how this should be a catalyst and create additionality and things like that. Nathan, can you just sort of give us an idea of when you were strategizing here, how you were thinking about taking this funding and trying to make sure that it was more than just what could be spent, by that funding?
Yeah, so from the offset, the board were very clear and shared our ambition of maximising the potential of this fund. Whilst 20 million over 10 years does sound like a lot, I think in reality it doesn't spread that far across a boundary area. So we were very clear from the offset that we wanted to explore throughout our consultation and engagement the opportunity with stakeholders to leverage those funds and match fund projects and proposals and partnerships as well. So I'd encourage anybody working on this plan to seek those opportunities. For example, we've had a number of conversations with EMCA, our new combined authority, and looked at strategies and policies to see how we can build partnerships and networks to increase the resource on some of our proposals. But we've also looked at opportunities like with our Police and Crime Commissioner to build a reparative justice programme where we will work with the other partnership boards to match fund a wider programme which could increase the level of support throughout the area. So it's something that we have done throughout the process and something that we will continue to do as we go into the delivery stage.
And Quincy, when you've been considering the various investment programs that you've had in Westmoreland and Furness, how have you considered additionality and using them as a catalyst rather than just the sum of their own parts?
That's a really key aspect for us, because sustainability is for me one of the absolute key things. The programs, whether they be for 5 years or 10 years in this particular case, are fantastic, and they're a brilliant opportunity to change and develop things. But what we really want is that sustainability of change and opportunity to come in. So we are looking at private sector. We're looking at how where we're making changes in investment that can lead to long-term change. Also on a slightly smaller scale through the Team Barrow work that we're doing, we're looking at social value and how we can work with some of the private sector organisations, supply chains, in terms of how we can be embedding that thinking there. What we're also doing is connecting with different funding organisations that we know focus and provide funding with areas to try and help bring together a more joined up and holistic approach where we can perhaps align some of the goals and aspirations and objectives of various funding so we can complement. So we're really trying to take a little bit of a mixed approach, as I say, that long-term infrastructure aligned with working in partnership with both the private sector and funders.
Thank you very much, Tracy. So there's a couple of questions here, and I'm just going to leave it. Oh, sorry, Mark, you come in first, and then I'll ask my question.
Sorry, I just building on both responses really. I think it's a really healthy question to ask at this stage of the programme. How do we turn 20 million over 10 years into 25 million? And I think the nature of this programme really does enable, it's a guaranteed funding source of capital and revenue over 10 years. And the opportunities there for, as Tracy and Nathan said, for match, it's an attractive proposition for other public services in terms of match funding, but also, opportunities to borrow, opportunities to invest. This is almost unique in its sort of profile and its structure. The other bit, building on what Tracy said, working in Gedling and also on other projects, the crime here would be to duplicate, to invest 20 million in things that are already happening, or Tracy's point, alignment is critical. Complementary interventions are critical. So engaging with the NHS, with the council, with the Police and Crime Commissioner, and understanding what their investment priorities are for that locality is absolutely critical. Because then I've always seen Plan for Neighbourhoods as this piece of the jigsaw as part of the place shaping puzzle. Understanding what's going on already or what is planned in the future, and how we then design the vision and construct those interventions to fit in to complement what's already going around, or what's already being invested. So at a strategic level, I think that's a really important step to take, probably in conjunction with the engagement and the consultation process.
Thanks, Mark. And just to pick up, there's a couple of people have asked the question, and I just will invite whoever wants to answer this to come in. But when it comes to the establishment of the board, do you get the board in place first and then appoint the chair, or appoint the chair and then get the board in place? Has anybody got some strong thoughts on that?
For us, we didn't have a specific position on that. When we launched the programme and tried to establish the board, we sent out an expression of interest for members and for the chair at the same time. And then we reviewed those applications, and there were some members who wanted to be chair also. But we made a decision as a panel internally and made that appointment. But for us, it was a fluid process where there wasn't a priority in that process.
Excellent, thank you. So Nathan, while I have you here, so if you were now in the position where you were getting Pride in Place funding, what sort of things would you be thinking about right now? So this is the kind of period of time in between knowing that you're going to get the funding. You've got some Q&A information, but you haven't had the full prospectus yet. What sort of things would you be thinking of doing?
To build on Mark's point that he's just made there, where he expanded on in terms of how we maximise the fund over the 10 years, I think one of the most critical and successful things we've done in the development of our programme has been to address the gaps of what's available right now to concentrate and maximise the impact of the fund. So I'd encourage anybody to make sure that is part of your strategic approach. Compliments to Mutual Ventures here. Mark and his team have led a fantastic engagement campaign where we looked at the whole menu of interventions and appreciated that there were a number of opportunities within there that could arguably trigger an emotive response from board members when wanting to direct support, such as housing and homelessness. So what Mark and his team did was they took a deep dive into all of the menu of interventions and what was available out there at the moment, and then built up a presentation to support where the support was available for those. And then we prioritized areas where there wasn't as much support and we could give funding and attention to address those gaps. So I definitely encourage everybody to approach their plans in that way. And then another thing that I would recommend is that within your consultation, a lesson learned for us was that we weren't able to engage with the youth demographic as well as we wanted to, but we really wanted to make sure we got the views and feedback from them. So the timing of our consultations was over each of the last 2 summers, which coincided with school holidays. So in hindsight, if you've got any engagement activities to target any areas of the community within your campaigns. Just ensure that you are weighing up any potential risks with that engagement and lining up contingencies to make sure that you get the full reach of community involvement that you would ideally have for a programme such as this.
Thank you, Nathan. Tracy, one of the questions which has come in here is about consultation fatigue, and how with all of these programs going on that people just get, exhausted by being consulted on everything. How have you thought about this in Westmoreland Furness, and is that something which has come up for you?
That's really spooky because I have literally just written the words consultation fatigue down on my notepad. So it's absolutely something that we're conscious of, and it goes back, I guess, a little bit to my earlier point of how do we join things up, because I suppose with Pride in Place for us, we're quite fortunate in that unlike Gedling, it's a much smaller number and a much more confined geography, which does make targeting some of the different groups and the residents a little bit more straightforward. But I'm also really conscious that that's an area that has had a lot of activity and intervention around it, from very bespoke work with health and the police in partnership over recent years, through to the wider significant investments, so Team Barrow and the Heart of Barrow focus. So for me, there's a couple of things. There's very targeted engagement in terms, one of the things that we're looking at is how we can almost door knock every resident, so we can do that absolute granular, make it relevant, have those conversations on the street with our residents. And particularly those families and individuals who perhaps wouldn't engage in some of the more formal and structured consultations that we carry out. But also, crucially, it's how we align and how we, if we're going to engage and have conversations with the community and with partners on one thing, it shouldn't be done in isolation. So the team will be looking at how, if there's existing activities happening, if there's existing consultations planned, how we can bring that together. So in effect, we might be having community conversations on a number of topics. And there'll be some really rich information coming through there that will both feed Pride in Place, but other programmes that are happening. And similar at that sort of more strategic level with partners, we're already having discussions through different mechanisms around how the public sector, for example, deliver services in a particular geography. This might be a geography we want to test and focus on. So it's about bringing those conversations together, because truly consultation fatigue, I think, is a very significant risk around some of this. And we've all got lots of different programs together. So it's about how we make sure all of the players and the partners are talking, and we're doing that joined up event and that joined up conversation for me.
Thank you, Tracy. Mark, there's a couple of questions which have come in here, which I'm going to offer to you first, but you might want to bring in others at the same time. How do you go through setting and defining the outcomes that this investment hopes to achieve?
Yeah, so good question. I think there's several ways of looking at it. Well, several things that inform it. One is the insight you get from residents, from local people, from businesses, in terms of what the problems are and what the problems, challenges, or the opportunities are. And through mainly engagement, I found, rather than just sort of universal consultation, having a conversation about sort of flipping on its head, understanding what the challenges are, understanding their impact, and then almost, going through a theory of change exercise. These are the problems. What does good look like? And I think, a term I used at the start, it's for the neighbourhood board to determine the vision and what good looks like in 10 years. So from that, you sort of, across a number of challenges or opportunities, you get an understanding of, what the current baseline is against some outcomes, but what good would look like. And some of them aren't tangible, sort of, 15% increase in this and that. Some may be, people feeling safer, people feeling happier. So you need to understand what the metrics are for that. But ultimately, this is around long-term changes in sort of sentiment and how people feel about the place and their pride in place. But I think the nucleus really has to be what local businesses and people are saying now, and what they want to see changed. And then there's that flow in terms of, okay, and this is what good would look like over 10 years.
Thank you, Mark. Nathan, there's a very specific question here, which you're probably best placed to answer at the minute, just about what sort of level of officer support has been needed for the board to operate over your first 6 months or so.
So immediately we've had a core team of senior leadership members. So Section 151 officer, head of governance, and director of place, and myself, and the chief exec has also attended meetings to provide the governance. That's been supported particularly through the consultation elements by council officers, leads within relevant service areas that are going to support the proposals that we've included now in our 4-year investment plan and 10-year vision. So it's been frequent engagement and interaction from those leads throughout that consultation period, but more consistent from a senior leadership point of view at this stage. We'll be moving into our preparing for delivery stage up to April, where those council officers, the leads within the project areas, will play a more significant role now in helping us build the specifications required to turn these proposals into viable projects.
And then just as part of all of that, the board obviously doesn't have its own staff, so the council would provide the secretariat support to it and things like that.
Yes, that's a good point. So we've had our executive support team help facilitate the meetings, take minutes, notes, prepare meeting rooms, and all of those administrative functions to support the progress.
Fantastic, thank you. Tracy, when thinking about a long-term program like this, it's all very well getting everything set up at the start, setting the outcomes and things, but over something like a 10-year period, things will shift around, priorities might even change. How would you consider building flexibility into a program of this length, and is that important?
Yeah, that's absolutely important, because as you say, things will change. Some of the interventions that might be taken will have really positive impact, or they might not have the impact that the board and we think. And it might be that we get some really valuable learning from that, and something else becomes a priority, or something else that we want to do. So we absolutely need to build that flexibility in from the start. And for me, that's about how we build in those opportunities to review and refresh the priorities and the plan, and evaluate as we go along. It's like you were saying before, what does good look like? And that will mean different things to different partners and different people. Good for a resident living within that community will mean something probably quite different to what good for the police looks like, or other organisations at that level. So we really do need to build those checks and those reviews in. And I think we need to be really open and honest from day one in that it will change, it will shift, they always do. The local and the national landscape shift as we go along. So as I say, those regular reviews, those check-ins, is it still relevant? How do we update? How do we monitor? How do we take forward? And again, that goes back to the membership of the board that we talked about previously, because as we do get that learning throughout, it may be that we've identified that we need additional or different people to join that board, or people may choose to step back as circumstances change. So I think that's got to be absolutely built into those terms of reference from the beginning, and that's something that we've done in other structures previously.
Absolutely, and it's very rare that somebody would be on a board for 10 years anyway, perhaps, so that you will have churn. Mark, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, just building on Tracy's point, I think I can only speak from a plan for neighbourhoods perspective here. It may change for Pride in Place, but ultimately, this will be a 10-year programme. The way that the plan for neighbourhoods is established is you write a 10-year regeneration plan that includes a vision. And the idea is that vision is broad enough to maintain, if possible, the 10 years and remain relevant. And then the specifics come in the 4-year investment plan. So you're targeting immediate priorities, or, then there is this sort of, after that 4-year investment plan, there's a 3-year and a 3-year. So back to Tracy's point about this the programme provides mechanisms for this flexibility, but ultimately, if possible, the 10-year vision is broad enough to be maintained, although accepting that it may need some tweaking as well as needs evolve and as, you know, other opportunities arise.
I mean, I just personally, I love the idea of a 10-year commitment to something. I think our politics and therefore public services have become a little bit too short-term focused, and the fact that there is a guiding light that is 10 years in the future does make achieving great things possible, I think. So if at all possible, let's try and keep the vision in mind, but accepting that, you know, the world moves on and the environment and context will change. I just want to come to each of you just to get some last hints and tips here, really. So Nathan, thinking about your experience of establishing the plan for neighbourhoods, are there any key bits of advice, key bits of learning that you would like to share that you haven't had a chance to yet?
I think the main thing for us was around that engagement piece, just ensuring that in your consultation that you are ensuring that you've got a plan in place to engage with all aspects and all demographics, and then you've got as many contingencies as you can to ensure that you do manage to hear those voices. We tried with best effort, as I say, to engage with the community, the youth community, and we are mitigating actions that we put in place did help us to achieve a lot of that interaction. We engaged with members of the Youth Council, for example, but not being able to get it into the schools over the summer holiday was something that we felt was lacking on reflection. So what we're going to do is ensure that throughout the delivery period, ongoing throughout the Plan for Neighbourhoods, we are going to set up subgroups and ensure that regular contact and engagement is made across areas of the community to ensure that we've got that flexibility and that the decisions that we're making are all timely and relevant.
Thank you very much, Nathan. And Mark, I'll come to you after Tracy just to see if you have anything you want to say. But Tracy, thinking about your work on Team Barrow, what bits of advice would you be giving to people now setting out on their Pride in Place programs? And, you know, what do you wish you knew when you started on the Team Barrow work?
I think for me, I'd probably echo some of what Nathan was saying in terms of that engagement is absolutely key at the beginning, and making sure that that is as robust as possible, and helping to use that to co-produce the vision and the plan, because getting that buy-in from the very beginning of the communities is absolutely key for me. I think there's also something about keep your governance as simple and straightforward as you can do. I think that in terms of sort of decision making and that ability to react as things change and opportunities come up, I think is absolutely crucial, that ability to flex within your governance. And thinking about the sustainability from the beginning as well, and how we can build that in, as we've talked about. And then I think the final piece, and it's something that we've been talking about recently, and we've built into an element of the Team Barrow, is how can you do some quick wins, whatever those quick wins look like, to demonstrate to community and to partners that this is a real programme and we're not just developing plans, and there's not that sort of feeling that is anything ever going to happen. Is what are the quick things that you can do at the beginning so that people can see something is happening, that change, the benefit, how it resonates with them, and that really does help with the buy-in and getting people on board to take things forward.
I love that. It is a 10-year program, but we're humans and we like to see things that we can touch and feel as soon as possible. So those quick wins in order to get buy-in and show people this is real, that's so important. Mark, any final thoughts or comments?
Oh, sorry, Nathan's got his hand up. Should I?
Oh, sorry, Nathan, you can come in first and then I'll go to
No
Mark.
problem. Thank you. I was just going to say another thought would be just to ensure that you're developing a communications plan with the board and the council for the ongoing delivery of the scheme. So make sure that where possible, you are weighing up the available resources and opportunities that you've got within the board membership and within the council, and then also you're identifying potential opportunities with partners that you're going to procure along the way to really maximise the potential in promoting the successes and progress of the programme across the community. So that's really key as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Thank you. Mark, quick final word.
Yeah, no, I think just a lesson learned on reflection, the timescales, although you know, as the FAQ currently stands, Pride in Place neighbourhood boards will be submitting their neighbourhood plans about this time next year. But actually, if you work back, and I think some of the timescales are you need to confirm your membership around June, July with them. The neighbourhood boards meeting once a month for 2 hours. You know, if every minute of those meetings count really, and you're doing an awful lot of work in between those meetings. So getting on with some of the early work now in terms of thinking about your board, doing some of the strategic mapping, that will allow for more time, because you know it sounds like a lot of time between now and next November, but actually, as we discussed on this call, there's an awful lot of work to do. So and really focusing on those 2 hours with neighbourhood boards on a monthly basis, if that's what you do, and really getting maximum bang for buck out of those meetings, and that involves a lot of preparation and a lot of work because you only have access to them for a limited period of time. So making best use of time between now and then, I think, is a really good idea.
Really good advice, Mark. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to draw us to a close now, and do get in touch. I will be sending a follow-up email after this, so you'll have our contacts if you want to talk about your Pride in Place program. Today has been largely about the process and getting the structure right, as we have limited information from MHCLG on Pride in Place. We don't have a prospectus yet. We will be following this webinar up with a second webinar that will be able to get into a bit more of the what, not just the how. So on that note, Tracy, Nathan, Mark, thank you so much for your time, and thank you to everybody for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone.